Joshua Smith here, and welcome to the GSD Mode podcast. Now get shit done and smash that subscribe button now. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast interview, and today we are joined with another badass guest. So before we jump in here, just to give you guys some context and some history, a little backstory of our guest today. So our guest today, Cody Steck. So Cody's been in the real estate industry for about 6 years now. His first couple of years he had spent on a couple different teams and testing that element out, but was an agent on a team, or well, two different teams, and we'll kind of get into that as we go through this interview here. Then broke off on his own. Then went through some transitions of growing his team, and we'll go through that as well. But really about 18 months ago, man, is when things started to change massively for him, when he really started hitting that stride. And, he found kind of his marketing niche, if you will, mastered it, and committed to it. It's been consistent with it. And that's YouTube. And we'll talk about that. But in his first full year of committing hardcore to YouTube and putting that consistent content out there, ended up doing a $214,000 in commissions from YouTube. And then this year now is on track to do over 300,000. So again, like identifying this lead source, fully committing to it, fully mastering to it, being consistent with it has just been a massive game changer. So I'm stoked and honored to have Cody here on the podcast with us today. Welcome to the podcast, dude.
Yeah, man, I'm freaking stoked to be here.
Yeah, no, man. I mean, look, dude, your story shows the importance of commitment and mastery. It's one of those things where, everything works and nothing doesn't. But the issue is with so many is they become a jack of all trades and a master of none. And I know that you went down this path for some time where it's, okay, I'm doing some Facebook stuff. I'm doing all these different things, but we're just kind of dabbling and not, truly committing to that mastery element and that consistency element. And then YouTube became that game for you, man. So, before we jump into that, dude, which I'm really excited about learning from you on this. I'm always intrigued first in our guest journeys that led him here in the first place. So I know you've been in the game for about 6 years, but how'd you decide on real estate in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually kind of got into real estate in a flip way from what most real estate agents go through. So I actually was working at a go-kart racetrack, and I was in college trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Just working with go-karts and stuff. It was a pretty fun job. And it was always a goal of mine to buy my first house at a young age. That was just something I wanted to get into. I'd always read about and heard about these people who'd been successful in life. And, I think it's like 90% of I don't know what the number is, but like a lot of people grow their wealth through owning real estate. And so that was one thing that I'd always wanted to do right from the beginning. I'm like, look, I need to get into real estate because, it's the clearest path to wealth. So I saved up, bought a townhome, and went through that process and realized, hey, making that first payment when I was working at a go-kart racetrack, the pay was not great. And so I thought, man, after 1 month of making my own payment, I was like, I need to get some roommates because I don't want to pay for this all on my own, moving out of my parents' house at that time. So that was where I made the transition. I got a couple of roommates, and that's when it kind of clicked. I was like, hey, if I actually moved back in with my parents, I was living with my mom at the time, I could actually just rent out the room that I was staying in. And now I'd be cash flowing every single month on this place. I'd be making $200-300 a month just for owning this place, which is pretty simple. And so I just kind of got my head spinning, and I was like, real estate really that's where the power's at. So I got into real estate from the investment side more so. I never did end up moving back out. I just stayed there and basically lived in this place for I think my share was like $200 a month. And so that kind of just got me into the investing side. And I started going to investing meetings, meeting other investors who were doing rentals and flips. And eventually it just led to me getting my license. And I thought, hey, sales sounds like a good thing. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I like real estate. This is the next logical step. And so that's what kind of got me into the business from the start.
Love it, dude. That's awesome, man. So then, your first 2 years, you started off on a team. And it sounds like there was two different teams. You were on one for each for a year.
Yeah.
And a question that, a lot of agents, I mean, we're both in the same Facebook group, and you probably see this so often from but it's a question that almost comes up daily in there. And plus from the podcast of, agents, especially with new agents, thinking of, should I join a team, right? So first off, like, how did you decide on that joining a team was the best route for you initially versus, becoming an individual agent? And then we'll kind of, then I'll have some follow-up questions on, the value that you learned and your recommendations and so forth.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it was really one of those things where because I'd already started talking to other people in the real estate space who were doing flips and rentals and development and already had their license, I talked to 3 different people who I kind of looked up to at the time. And they all said, look, if you're getting in, join a team. And so I didn't know any different. That's what I did. I just went in, joined a team. And now looking back, I mean, that was the best decision I could have made, because if I had joined this business without being on a team, I don't think I'd be selling real estate at this point. I think I would have fallen out of the business because it's tough, and I think that most people need that structure. They need a little bit of that. They need somebody to lean on. They need the leads. They need the structure of motivation throughout the day. A lot of teams or brokerages are kind of like the rah-rah, just keeping people going throughout the day. But I think that's important, especially when you're first getting in. I would say that unless you've kind of got a little bit of a sales background, or you're just that person who's willing to go out there and talk to anybody with no fear, you're just that super outgoing person, I think that most people should join a team, even if it's for a year, 2 years, whatever it might be, and I'm glad I did. So.
Yeah, love it, dude. So then, what was it? Because you were on a team for the first year, and then you transitioned to a different team the second year. I mean, what led to that move? And I guess where I'm kind of going here is, because I get the question all the time of, should I join a team? Right? And it's like, look, the first thing I want people to understand, and it's the same thing with a brokerage, but it's like, look, all teams aren't created equal. All brokerages aren't created equal. And it doesn't mean that there's always the best one. It's about identifying what's best for us and our needs. And, so I'm guessing that after that year, you realize that, hey, man, maybe that team was, great, but there might've been an environment that was even better for you to thrive in.
Yeah. So the reason why I made that jump is the first place I was at, I was there for about 13 months or so. And I got a call from somebody who I knew growing up, a guy that was much older than me. But we grew up in the same, or I grew up in the neighborhood that he lived in, basically. So he knew that I had gotten into the business, and I guess maybe had been kind of watching me. So he calls me up one day and he's like, hey, I need another sales agent on my team. We're selling new construction. Told me a little bit about kind of the new construction stuff. He said, you're going to be on the team. 80% of it will be selling this new construction, but there'll also be some other stuff that you can continue doing your own business, just kind of referrals and leads or whatever from his book of business. And so it was a much different structure. That first team was very heavy on Facebook leads and Google leads, pay-per-click, and then also just like the occasional open house and door knocking. But this second team was a totally different avenue. The way that he had pitched it to me, my team leader at the time, he said, look, the cool thing about new construction is you get the ability to go out there and control the market, right? You get to control the listings. When you have a development of 32 new houses, you've got 32 pieces of property that you control and you can sell. And so that was really kind of enticing to me. And I said, I really want to learn this side of it because it's totally different than what I've been doing. And I think there's a good opportunity to go into this. And the unique structure that he had set up, it wasn't like an in-house sales team like you would find with some of these big builders. We had the ability to sell this new construction, but then we could also do our own business along the, on the side, basically. So we weren't like tied to only doing that business for the new construction builder. So that was really what kind of, I thought, hey, I've been in this for a year. It's working out. It's fine, but maybe there's a better opportunity over here. And I kind of looked at it, worst case, I could always come back. I know that my first team leader, he would always take me back. I was closing deals, I don't know, probably top 1, 2, or 3 agents there on the team. So I was closing business and it was working, but I just thought, hey, there's something else here on the new construction side. It sounded really intriguing, and maybe this is something I want to do. So that's the reason why I made that jump.
Yeah, I love it, dude. And it's so important, and unfortunately, and I get it, why a lot of agents, kind of maybe miss this concept. And I don't know if it's that they aren't thinking of it mentally, or maybe it's just financially they can't necessarily afford to do it. But it's not so much about making money those first few years. I mean, we want to make money, but it's about that experience and the person that you become through those experiences that, lay that foundation where then you allows you then to go out there and make millions,
Yeah.
So I love it, dude. So then, all right. So you're on the second team doing, focusing and learning about the new construction and so forth. At what point did you know that it was time for you to go on your own? Because this is another question I get all the time.
Yeah.
And even from agents on my team that are like, hey, like when like, is it time to go on my own? And I want to support them and whatever, but it is a thing of like, how do we time it out right? And what does that look like? And how do we know if it's the best move? Like how did you know it was time to go on your own?
Yeah, so this was kind of there was two sides to it. So the downside that I to learn with new construction is that you're on a very long time schedule. I mean, at this point, we were about 6 months before we were going to start building when I joined that team. And I mean, we just ran into the delay after delay. So it was delay with the city, and then it was a delay with the bank for the financing, and then it was a delay with permits, and then it was a delay on excavation. And so it was this super long process where I joined the team and I was still closing business just from my own sources of lead generation. But the actual new construction was, I mean, you're in that for like 12 to 24 months at the minimum. It's not a thing where you just jump in and you start selling in most cases, unless they've already got inventory, it's a very long process. So that was one thing that I was kind of like, man, I've been doing this for 6 months or 8 months. I think it was even up to 9 months. And I still hadn't sold a single one of those. I hadn't closed on a single one of those new construction houses. I mean, we had sold them, we'd contracted, we'd started the process, but I hadn't gotten paid off of it. And so I was kind of like, man, I'm not making any money here, but I'm closing all of this other business. Because at the time I was doing my own Facebook leads, I was doing Facebook groups, I was doing open houses, just, doing the hustle there. And I basically just looked at it and said, look, okay, here's how much I'm making with my gross commission. I'm paying out X amount to the brokerage and to the team on all of this business that I'm doing by myself. Maybe this is the time where I've already got this. Even if I jump out on my own and my revenue drops, let's say 25 or even 50%, well, I'd probably still end up making the same, because now I don't have to split it with somebody else. I'm taking home that whole commission. And so that was what I anticipated. Give or take a little bit, that's kind of what happened. Is I made that jump, and revenue, I did close less deals overall, but I got to take home more of the pie. And so after those 2 years being on teams, I felt like I had a pretty good grasp of what I was doing and what was required in order to close deals.
Yeah, love it, dude. So then what were some of the learning lessons, if you will, that you had to encounter? Because look, I mean, whatever the venture is that we go, decide to move, the new road we go down, if there's always things that you can't anticipate and can't, you try to plan the best that you can, but sometimes you get, I mean, what's that? I don't know if it's Mike Tyson or George Foreman, the quote though of the punch that knocks you out is the one that you don't see coming, right?
Yeah.
So like what we pivoted from those teams, because at this point all you had known was being on teams, and now you're going to end it, and you knew how to generate business, but maybe there's other things that you weren't able to anticipate. Like what were some of those learning lessons, like in that first year after leaving the team, and now you're fully on your own?
Yeah. So I mean, the first thing that I would say, the thing I always learned that it came back to was like, I could always be doing more. I could always be doing more lead generation. And I think even for most agents, that's one thing that everybody could do, is they could always lead generate more. And, I know that you talk about kind of the funnel of real estate, right? The goal is to get people in the funnel, and then that kind of funnels down into deals that you actually close. And so getting people into the funnel is the most important part, because when you close a lead, or, when you close a deal, you just lost your highest qualified lead, right? Because now they're closed and they're not going to make you any more money unless they're like an investor or they go to sell one day, right? But at that point in time, you can't count on them for business anymore. So that was one thing that I kind of come back to, is like, lead generation needed to pick up, because I wasn't getting fed deals anymore. Even if the deals were, I was only taking home half the commission. That was something I had to shift for, to be able to pick up more business and say, look, I really need to focus on the lead generation side, because that's the starting point to all things business. So that was one side of it. And I think kind of like in addition to that, it was also the process of like building a team. I had jumped in and I was like, okay, I need to get an assistant. I think at the time I was probably doing, 20 to 25 deals. And it was like, I'm like, okay, I'm ready for an assistant so that I can focus on lead generation and do this other stuff. But I think in hindsight, I wasn't quite ready for that. I should have built out my systems and my processes a little bit better, and maybe start with the transaction coordinator or something like that. Kind of took it in smaller steps, because as soon as I brought on that assistant, I was a little bit like, oh man, now I got to keep this guy busy and I got to pay him. And it was just, it was a, I think for me, it was a bigger hassle at that point. So
yeah, love it, dude. Love it, man. So then, all right. So in the first lesson learned there was, all right, man, I gotta have a large focus on lead generation. And it's an important lesson to learn, man. I mean, like, it's like, I don't care how good anybody is in whatever business that they're in. Like, you can be the best doctor, the best attorney, the best realtor, the best whatever. But if you don't master the ability to be able to have a flow of new customers coming in, right? Like, you're gonna go broke. Right.
yeah,
And then past customers, of course, you get that repeat referral business, but that can take a little bit of time to build up and so forth. And I look at your past clients as that's just another lead source. And now you're, farming that lead source to go out there and get referral business and so forth. But it's, at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter how good you are, man, at what you do. If you don't master lead generation and get good at that, you're going to struggle.
yeah,
Right. So,
yeah. That's what the business is all about. It's all about real estate is not the person who knows the contracts the best is not necessarily the most successful. The person who is the most friendly is not necessarily the most successful. It's the person who can go out there and talk to people and bring in new business. That's the person who's going to succeed. You don't have to know the contracts inside and out. You don't have to know social media inside or out, or YouTube, or whatever it might be. I mean, that's not what this is about. It's about being able to find new business and kind of bring them in and be able to work with them.
yeah, dude. Yeah. So, so then if we fast forward to what's about 2 years ago, 18 months ago or so forth, like, YouTube was the path that you discovered, which was going to be best and most lucrative for you, or at least you made your best educated guess that you could make at that time, that was the path you wanted
Yeah.
to go down. How did you know, like, when that clicked, like, how did it click for you, first of all?
Yeah. So I kind of, YouTube was always a thing that was like there, but it wasn't really, it was more just entertainment. Right. And I think at that time, like 2018, 2019 was really when it kind of, at least in my eyes, made that shift to like the point where it's like, you can actually get business from YouTube. I mean, that's when Gary Vee was blowing up on YouTube, and he's like, hey, you need to be the mayor of your town and do video and this and that. And so it's kind of a combination of like video becoming more important and YouTube becoming a platform that you could actually get business from, that it all just kind of clicked. And so I actually didn't go into YouTube with the intention of talking about my area from a real estate perspective. I just wanted to kind of use YouTube originally as a creative outlet to basically just talk about things that I'm passionate about. Right. It was sales, it was money, it was personal finance, it was real estate, it was investing in real estate, like all these different things. That's kind of what it was originally going to be. And then I saw, Jackson Wilkie, and he's like, hey, we're having huge success here in Portland. At the time I had already been doing like a couple videos, and it was like maybe 3 weeks later, he's like, look, YouTube's the thing, like, you got to do this. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I'm already doing this. So I basically just started up that channel at that time, and started making videos. And it was brutal in the beginning. I mean, I was getting 5-10 views a day, and it was slow. I think my first video was like September, and I didn't get my first lead until January 1st. So it was about 4.5 months, I think. But ironically, the very first lead who reached out to me is the biggest deal I've ever done. He bought a $1.3 million house, and biggest deal I ever did. So it's like, that's when it really kind of clicked. It was like, hey, I think at that time by January I was probably getting like 50 views a day maybe on my channel between all my videos. And that's really when it kind of clicked, is like, it doesn't matter how many views you're getting, because if just one view is a very well qualified person, that's all that matters. It's not about how many views you're getting. You're not trying to go viral here. You're just trying to get 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 people watching that are actually serious about it and want to reach out to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's so cool about it, dude, is, I mean, if we look at inside the Mastery Bootcamp program, I mean, Jackson would say is kind of the one that, cracked the code at the highest scale, if you will, and he starts telling us inside the program of what he's doing. But then now it's one of those things where, I mean, we have so many members, dude, that have just, I mean, you got like what, Jackson, you got Eli Schmidt, you got Robert and Christy Hayes, you got Brett Rakowski, you got Chris Igo, you got Trevor Jones, and then of course you're like you look, and everybody in all different markets, different price points, different situations, different scenarios, but there is a science to it, right? I think people need to understand that of what it takes. And that applies to every lead source. Like, okay, if I'm doing Facebook ads or whatever, it's like, dude, I got to it's not just about where to click the buttons and know how to use ads manager. It's about really like, you got to know that, but then you got to, that's like as Russell Brunson says, you got the art and then you got the science, right?
Yeah.
And, the science is like the buttons to click. The art is the strategy that you put in there to create the masterpiece. And so let's kind of break that down, dude, because I mean, we're seeing people now, dude, I mean, making, 100,000 plus a month on a net basis from YouTube, right? It's just crazy, the upswing of this thing. But, what if we were to unpackage this, like where, I mean, if you were, like, where do we start? Right? Like, where do we, just kind of walk us through, like, I mean, because you got consistency of the content, you got the planning of the content, you got the, creation of the content, you got the distribution of the content, all of that. From the highest level up there, like, what do you, if somebody's looking to go this channel or do this, or maybe if you right now could go back and tell yourself and give yourself advice, knowing what you know now, like what are, like, at a high level, like the most important things people need to understand when it comes to having success with YouTube?
Yeah. So I think for me, the things that I would tell myself if I were starting is it's the type of content that you're putting out there is probably the most important thing. I think it's probably, you want to be making videos on the things that people are searching. I think this is one thing where I've heard a lot. People are like, hey, YouTube doesn't work for real estate. I tried interviewing the restaurant owner, the mayor, the whatever. And it's like, I think that's kind of like Gary Vee's strategy that he told a lot of people is like, look, you want to be kind of the mayor of your town and everybody and you make connections and you talk about this bar, that whatever, but nobody's searching for that, right? Nobody cares about the best restaurant down on State Street. People really care about, kind of the basics that a lot of these guys, like you just mentioned, all those names you rattled off, everybody's kind of figured this out. It's like, people want to know cost of living. They want to know the pros and cons. They want to know what the neighborhoods actually look like. So when I started, I started with a lot of vlog tours about, just showing the neighborhoods. And for me, having grown up in my area, I just like drive down the street with my camera out the window and people love that. And it's like, so it's like weird to me. People reach out to me all the time and say, your videos are awesome. They're so helpful. Like, thank you so much for doing that. People say, I can't believe I'm talking to you. It's like really weird because my videos are literally just like filming houses down the street. And it's like, I don't know. That's what people want to see. They want to see what the neighborhood looks like. They want to see if there's trees or if there's plants or if there's bushes or if there's grass or no grass or, how wide are the streets? Like, just kind of that visual representation of what people really care about. And then also, opinions and kind of like pros and cons of what people are looking for. So I think from a high level, that's really what it is like putting out content of what people want to see. And then also, trying to make it as high of quality as you can, but without losing that authenticity of just who you are, right? A lot of people, like I said, people reach out to me all the time and they're like, Cody, I really appreciate that you are not just another salesman, just trying to pitch your services and sell me a house, right? I tell it as it is. I'm like, hey, look, this, you have to be careful as an agent, but like, I'll tell people like, hey, the schools in this area are just, they're fine. They're not the best, they're not the worst, but like, you can find areas with better schools. Or I tell people, hey, you might want to avoid this area. Like, I just try to tell it as it is, and people really appreciate that. And I think that's what really pulls people in. Is it's not a sales game, it's an education game.
Yep. Love it, dude. Yeah. So, all right. So then when it comes to type of content, if you, Like, have you found then, like, the important, like, what do you do for your research? All right, if somebody's like, all right, like, I get that, that's cool. Like, what do you do for research? Like, how do you, because I mean, success is in the preparation. So I'm guessing that there's
Yeah.
some methodical stuff that you do before you hit that record button.
Yeah. So, I mean, at this point, a lot of it has become kind of second nature, but like if you're just getting started, I mean, honestly, I follow a lot of what you teach is like go out there and copy people, like pull up my channel, pull up Jackson's channel, pull up Chris's channel, pull up, Robert and Chrissy Hayes. Those guys are rock stars. I talk to Robert, probably once a week. We just shoot messages back and forth about how things are going. But like pull up those channels and study the video. Don't look at what the content is necessarily. Don't look at what I'm doing or what I'm saying necessarily, but like figure out the structure, right? And I think probably the easiest thing is to take it back to making a video based around what your, I like to say the 5-paragraph essay, right? Like everybody learns that like in elementary school or whatever. It's like, hey, here's how you write a 5-paragraph essay. You've got an intro, you've got 3 main points, and you've got an outro. I think the video should theoretically be very much the same way for most videos. There's going to be like pros and con videos where you're like, hey, here's 5 pros and here's 5 cons. But for like the vlog tours, a lot of what that is it starts with an intro where it's like, hey, here's me in my area. Today we're talking about this area. I'll throw off a little hook to the video, saying, hey, we're going to be looking at this thing. It's really cool. So make sure you watch till the end, kind of stuff to keep people engaged. And then it goes into the 3 paragraphs where it's talking about these different areas or, different talking points that are things in your city that people might care about. And then it ends with an outro. So that's kind of the general structure of a general video. But when it comes to like research, honestly, a lot of it, if I was just getting started, that's what I would do is I would go out there and copy what other people have done and pair that with, make it your own, of course, don't copy it word for word, but like make it your own, but also go out there and, go to Google and find out what people are looking for. TubeBuddy is a great service for that. You can actually go and search what top terms are that people are looking for. But if you just go into Google or YouTube, you start typing like your city, it'll give you recommendations for what people are looking for. Those recommendations are what are searched the most. So literally just go to your area and type in Salt Lake City, and it'll say pros and cons of living in Salt Lake City or pros and cons of living in Provo or these different cities that you have. Or it might be cost of living, or it might be, transportation. I mean, it could be anything in that area. So I would just kind of copy those 2 things or, model those 2 things, take the most search terms and then figure out what other people are doing and kind of how they structure their video and then put it together.
Yeah. And here's the cool thing, when you talked about like the modeling after what other people are doing, right? Because, yeah, I might say copy or I might say rip off and duplicate, but at the end of the day, we're not actually copying. We're, like you mentioned, we're studying what they're doing and we're of course making it our own then from that standpoint, but, success leaves clues. And, when we talk about all these other people that were name dropping, like I've had them all on the podcast, right?
Yeah.
And we can go out there and see exactly what they're doing. But again, there's rhyme to the reason of each. And it's like when I go out there and I'll look at your channel or Robert and Christy Hayes' channel or Chris Igo's channel, seeing what the tags they're using, seeing whatever. It's okay. Well, hey, I just replaced Salt Lake City with Phoenix, right? And, whatever. A question that I do get quite a bit, and it's been coming up more and more as people are getting, get this exposure to how successful YouTube can be, is like, okay, like with the cost of living videos and stuff, like where are the best places that you found to go get that content that seems to be most accurate,
Yeah. I mean, some of it I pulled directly from the MLS for like housing data, as far as like sales prices for homes, but cost of living, a lot of it is generally like, I'll talk about utilities and I'm like, hey, I live in a 3,500 square foot house. Here's how much I pay for utilities in the summer when it's hot or in the winter when it's cold. Here's what I pay, and that's kind of what you can roughly expect to pay. Or here's what the gas is today. That's what you're going to pay for gas when you go to fill up. It's $2.27 a gallon. Or it might be, groceries or whatever. I mean, you again, just type into Google like cost of living for your area. There's people that are out there that have already done the research. And I just quote that and I'll put that in the video and say, yeah, I got this video from XYZ website. It says that cost of living for groceries is 95% of the national average, right? So if 100 is the national average, we're below that on groceries, but on transportation costs, we're above it, but on utilities, we're below, like stuff like that. It's just general research off of Google for the most part, and then also just kind of my own experience, here's how much I spend for this and for that and whatever.
Yep. Love it, dude. So then, all right, man. So we've got a thing that most people get caught, not most, but a lot of people get caught up on is the actual shoot and editing process. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So like, okay, the planning process again, dude, R&D, right. And as people are like, well, what items should I include in cost for living? Like, don't guess. Go, like I'm gonna go to Cody's channel. I'm like, okay, what are the bullet points that he's hitting for cost for living? And then I'll go throw that in Google for my own town,
Yeah.
right. But now that you got the research done and you're getting ready to record the video, a lot of people get caught up on the whole, well, dude, like I'm not a videographer, I'm not an editor, I don't know, it can be, it can be overwhelming, dude, right?
Yeah.
Like what do you recommend there? What does that look like?
Yeah. Dude, it's tough because I'm not that guy either. I tell people in my family or my friends, people who know me, I'm like, look, I'm not the creative guy. I'm not an artsy guy. I'm not, I don't look at things, me trying to film is not going to come out like somebody who does it professionally, right? Like it's just not my strength. My strength is more on like the numbers and the analytics and the sales side. So I don't know what I'm doing there, but it just came down to just doing it. I mean, you go back and look at some of my first videos and they're pretty freaking terrible, but they've got a lot of views, and like I go back and watch them and I'm like, oh man, the audio's off and the lighting's off and it just sucks. Like looking back, the videos are pretty terrible, but they still do well. I mean, I think these people who are watching the videos don't necessarily they want the information, they don't care about what color your shirt is or if your hair's done a certain way or if the lighting's perfect. I mean, audio is probably like the number one thing. Make sure people can hear you, make sure that like you're not in a wind tunnel or something. But beyond that, it's really just like getting started and doing your best. I mean, watch some videos, just again, type into YouTube how to record a video. I'm sure there's like 50 results that will give you, it's a 10-minute video. It'll say, here's how to get relatively good lighting, sit by a window. Here's how to get good audio. Make sure you've got a mic that's, decent quality. Honestly, I mean, your iPhone or whatever, your Android, I mean, is better than a lot of professional cameras. So it just is that simple. I mean, don't overthink it. And, get some basic tips just so you can kind of be aware. You're not totally oblivious. Because that'll save you time. Watching a 10-minute video is going to save you a lot of time. But it's just getting started and you'll get better. You'll figure it out. If you dive into it, you'll get better. And, the thing with YouTube is like, of course, if you can make higher quality videos, then go for it. But it's all about getting content out there because this is a long game. I mean, like I said, I had my first video. It was about 4.5 months before I got a lead. So during that time, I was putting out 2 to 3 videos per week consistently with no results, but I just kept doing it. And if you watch that timeline of videos, they get a little bit better each and every time, and the editing is tough. If you've got more time than money, you might have to learn editing, but if you just want somebody else to do it, I mean, I've got a virtual assistant who does all my editing now. It's $4 an hour. And I just basically take the files, give them to him. He knows exactly what I want. And it comes back 2 days later and I post it, so if you got a little bit of money, just hire it out.
Yeah. And the cool thing is there's systems like Fiverr, right. Or like, VA companies like dude, it's so freaking cheap, right. Like even the thumbnails and whatever, it's just so easy and cheap to outsource this stuff anymore. It's funny too, when you talk about like the iPhone, dude, I don't know what the total is. It's got to be close to around $100,000 and like film equipment, camera equipment that I bought over the years. Now I own, it's in my studio. I mean, like I have one, I have cameras that are just like 7-8 G's just for one camera, right. But everything I'm doing now, dude, is outside of these podcast interviews, but everything that I'm creating is just to be able to shoot with my iPhone. Right. Like I'm gonna sell that shit. Like I just have no need for it. It's like the iPhone is, it's so effective and then it can be quick and I don't need, not the setup process and, so
Yeah.
forth. So, all right. So then, all right. So if we start breaking down the different steps, right? So I'm just going to kind of rapid fire off just to get what your tips are and what you've, so then we have, okay, you've done your research, you've shot the video, you've got your person editing it. What is the frequency? Because I know that this stuff, like your consistency and your frequency, because the more that YouTube understands you're in this, right, the more that they're going to go out there and show you and recommends and so forth. So
Yeah.
what have you found to be that like perfect flow? Like I said, 1 a week, 2 a week, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I would say in the beginning, probably for the first 6 months, I'd recommend 2 to 3 times per week if you can, and because you want to show that consistency. Now, for me, I'm at the point where I've been doing it a year and a half. You'll get to the point where you realize there's only so much you can say about one particular city before you're saying the same thing over and over and over again. So a lot of my videos, it gets easier. I mean, because I talk about like, hey, here's why people are moving here. We've got great jobs, great schools, and the recreation. People move to Salt Lake because they want to ski or because they want to go hiking or have access to Moab or these different areas that are like, an hour drive, 2 hours, 3 hours drive. That's really what they're looking for. So each video will kind of become the same. And, it's really, I would say probably 2 to 3 per month, or 2 to 3 per week when you first get started. And then you can bring it back to a week. So right now I do once a week, and that's a good consistency, I think, to show people, yes, I'm still around. I'm still here doing this. Because if they go and watch one of my videos I did a year ago, I have people reach out. They're like, hey, is this Cody? Are you still in the business? Like, are you still selling? And so I get questions like that. But I think by putting out a video a week, it just lets people know, hey, I'm still here. I'm still doing this, still putting out new content about different cities and whatnot. But in the beginning, it's really important to try and do, I would say at least 2 a week is like the minimum for the first 3 months, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, because the cool thing is so much of this is evergreen. Like
Yeah.
if you're talking about schools, it's not like that school is going to go from a rating to a C rating in 12 months. Like most of it's evergreen. And then like the cost per living, like you could do, you could update that one every year for every single market.
Yeah.
Right. And little things. But yeah, I totally get that. So then, all right. So that's consistency as far as the content you're putting out. Then from there, if we look at the video itself, it's like, all right, like you if we start to break this down, you got, the thumbnail, which can enhance your click-through rate. You've got the title, you got, your descriptions, you got your tags. And then we'll talk about engagement and so forth. But, just best practices from when it comes to thumbnail to get to take advantage of that click-through rate, because it can make a big difference.
Yeah, I would say that thumbnails, in my opinion, is probably about 70% of the click-through, and titles are probably about 30%. Because every single like social media app now, there's a little picture, right? If you're scrolling through Facebook, you've got a picture that's this big, and then there's a little text bar above it for what somebody captions it with. So, it's like that. If you're going through Google, or going through the news app on your phone or whatever, there's always little pictures that kind of show you generally what the topic is. So I think thumbnails are probably the most important thing, and I think we've kind of trained our eyes as humans to look at the picture first and say, oh, that's an interesting picture. I wonder what this is about, and you read the title, right? So thumbnails are super important, and titles as well. I would say that the click-through rate on the video, how many times the video is being shown to how many people click through and actually watch the video, or at least start it, is the first metric that you want to look at. And then the second one is how long did they actually watch it for? So getting people to click in, thumbnails are tough. It's one of those things, again, you have to kind of learn. I would honestly, again, probably go with like Fiverr or Upwork or one of these services to create a high quality thumbnail for you, because that's going to give you a massive head start when it comes to videos. Because if you got a crappy thumbnail, people are not going to want to click on it. It's just kind of the truth there. So that's what I do for thumbnails. Titles are generally pretty easy. The titles are just exactly what people are searching for. Cost of living, Phoenix, Arizona, pros and cons of living in, Austin, Texas, whatever it might be. That's basically all the title has to be. And away you go. That's what's going to get picked up by YouTube, and that's what people are actually wanting. That's what they're searching for.
All right. So with click-through rate being the number one metric to really and again, all of these are important, but if we're saying that's, like if I'm tracking, I don't know, Facebook leads. I probably am going to start with, you know, my cost per lead or number of leads, and then I'll start looking, you know, the way down. So, but with the CTR there, like what is a good baseline? You know, like is it 5%, 6%, 7%? Like, how do you
Yeah.
know if you're winning?
5% is a good baseline. I do have like 1 or 2 videos that are pretty low. They're like in the probably 4 to 4.5% range. But for the amount of views that you're going to be getting on these types of videos, most people are going to be getting, you know, if you can get 1,000 views on a video, that's pretty dang good. I mean, even, you know, Jackson or some of these guys who are doing big channels and they've been at it for a long time and they're in these massive markets. I mean, if they get 10,000 views on a video, that's like a slam dunk. You know, you don't need millions of views. So the click-through rate should be theoretically pretty high. So 5% is kind of the baseline. And you always want to be split testing these things if you can. You know, TubeBuddy's a great service for that. You can actually split test two thumbnails against each other automatically. And, you know, 5% is the baseline. I've got some as high as probably 12 or 13%, which is really, really good. If you can get over 10, I mean, you're crushing it. So, you know, and it'll vary with the amount of views you get. If you get 100 views, you know, your click-through might be a lot higher, but as you go up to 10,000 views, it's going to drop, just as YouTube tries to continue putting it out there to more people who might be interested in it.
Now, do you wait for a certain period of time? Because I've had that where it's like I put out something in the first couple of days. I'm at like and this is like not a common thing, but this type of click-through rate. But I've had, you know, several where it's like a 16% click-through rate, you know, in that like first few days. But then after it's been several months, I'll go back and check it, and it dropped down to like a 6%. Like, I mean, do you have a baseline? Like, do you give it like, okay, hey, I'm gonna wait 30 full days before I pull those numbers into my tracker, so it gives it enough time, you know, for me to see that? Like, I mean, what is enough time that you found to rely on that metric?
Yeah, I think when you're getting started, you could probably, you might only wait like 2 or 3 days, honestly, because you don't have an audience built up. But now for me or for you, where we've got an audience, people will see my video and they'll click on it just because they know, oh, this is Cody's video. We like his stuff. They just click on it, whether they're actually interested in that or not. But if it's a new viewer coming in, you know, they might not be as likely to click on it because they don't know who I am. They don't know my content. They don't know what I'm about. This is something new for them. So they might not be willing to click on it. So like you said, your click-through rate, especially as you have, once you build an audience, your click-through rate is going to be much higher in the beginning. You know, I would say at this point, you know, once you've kind of got a little bit of an audience established, I would probably wait, you know, a week or so and see how it's doing. If your click-through rate is like super low just right off the bat, you probably want to change the thumbnail first or the title right away. But if it's doing pretty good, you know, if it's at 16% and then all of a sudden it drops to 8, you know, I'd probably leave that for, you know, 2, 3, 4 weeks. And if it continues to drop, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you're getting more views, then that's okay. You know, some of these videos that have millions of views will have like a 1% click-through rate because YouTube's just showing it to everybody. Said, look, this content went viral. We don't necessarily know why, but it did. It's getting millions of views. So they just continue pushing it out to every single person out there, which is really going to bring your click-through rate down. So it really is relative to how many views you're getting overall.
Perfect, man. So then you talked about so you said thumbnail, then title, and then you said, you know, you talked about retention being extremely important. So you said, you know, click through rate and then retention rate being, you know, that second most important. And again, when I say second most important, and this is me speaking to those watching and listening, all of these are of vast importance. It's not really a hierarchy.
Yeah.
It's just like these all need to be paid attention to. So when you look at retention rate, you know, I've heard certain things of, you know, but these are different industries and so forth. And I've heard, you know, from, you know, 35%, like, okay, when I'm doing these podcasts, these long form, I mean, they're, you know, 60, sometimes 90 minutes, you know, like I can't, I'm not going to get probably a 70% retention ratio, you know, right. You know, but I mean, what is that baseline that you really look at to, again, know that you're winning?
Yeah, so most of the videos that I make and that I would recommend people to make, your ideal length is going to be somewhere between 8 and 15 minutes. That's kind of the sweet spot for these types of videos. That gives you just enough time to deliver the valuable content, but not be so long that you're just you're just dragging it out with a bunch of filler, right? So 8 to 15 minutes is kind of that sweet spot. I found that for my videos in that range, If I can get over 50%, that's really dang good. Most of my videos are probably somewhere between 35 and 50%. The baseline I would say is really probably like 30% overall. If you're getting less than 30%, it's probably because you're, it just comes down to like things that you'll learn along the way. It could be quality of the video. It's probably audio or the video quality first, or it could be the fact that you're not changing scenes often enough, or you're not making it interesting or engaging, right? It's just you talking with a wall behind you for 10 minutes. Those are generally going to get less watch time, as opposed to something that's kind of showing a lot of different angles or B-roll or, houses or this or that. That's why you'll see people do that, because it keeps your eyes engaged and it keeps you watching.
Yep. Oh, I love it, dude. So then, I mean, and now, I mean, we're kind of breaking down the science, and then we'll get into the art, right? But then, when it comes to descriptions, tags, shit like that, does that really matter? I mean, if so, like, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I throw in a description just so it's there. I think it's a relatively easy thing to do. It takes 2 minutes to write something up. It doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be super in depth. So I do throw it in there. And there are ways on YouTube to just put in automatic tags for all of your videos. So my tags are basically pros and cons, my city name, any variation of that. So like Salt Lake City, Utah, Salt Lake City, SLC, pros and cons, just like all those different things that are just automatically there. So it only takes 1 or 2 minutes to do that, but ultimately it doesn't matter. YouTube really cares about click-through rate, watch time, and YouTube knows what you're saying. That's how they get subtitles. You don't upload subtitles, but they know what words are coming out of your mouth. So if they hear Phoenix, Arizona over and over and over and over again, they're like, oh, this video is probably about Phoenix. People who are watching other videos on Phoenix probably would, might be interested in this one. So YouTube knows that stuff. The description and tags, I'd say it's worth putting it in there, but definitely don't put your focus there.
Yeah. What about likes and subscribes? I've heard a lot of mixed stuff on this, and I know that you're an analytical dude. You're paying attention. You're testing this stuff. Yeah. You're tracking it. You're measuring it. I mean, have you found the like and the subscribe thing to really make a difference?
I think for what we're doing in the real estate space, I would say not really. I tell people to do it just because I think it creates engagement. And if it helps, it's easy to say, hey, give me a thumbs up on the video. That takes 2 seconds to put it in the video. If it gives you that 1% edge, it's worth it for that 2 seconds. The things that really matter though are, subscribers they matter in the sense that it gets people coming back to your channel. They're more likely to see your videos pop up on YouTube if they're subscribed to you. However, the people who watch my videos, only about 19 to 20%, it kind of fluctuates. Only 19 to 20% are actually subscribed to my channel. So if I get, right now I'm averaging, I think it's like 25,000 views a month. I mean, only 20% of those are actually subscribed. So what is that? That's 5,000 people. So I'm getting 20,000 views from people who are not subscribed to my channel. So I don't really care. I mean, my business is going, whether they're subscribed or not, I don't really care. It's more about how often are they coming back and watching my new videos. So subscribers are nice. There's some indirect benefits, but it's, again, I tell people to subscribe. I'm like, hey, subscribe to the channel so you can learn everything there is to know about what it's like to work, eat, sleep, live, and play here in this area. But the thing that you really want to get that I think a lot of people are overlooking is shares. You want your video shared. Now, I'm not talking like shared to Facebook. I have just started implementing this in a lot of my videos. I'll say, hey, share this with a friend or a family member who might be interested in moving to Salt Lake City. I think that YouTube is going to, they probably already do. I mean, there's not a lot of like, they haven't come out and said this, but the shares is really where it's at. Because if a husband is watching the video and they share it with their wife and they're like, hey, wife, check out this cool video I did, that I found on Salt Lake City, that tells YouTube. I think that's much more telling to YouTube of the quality of that video if people are actually sharing it with friends and family. And that's what will tell YouTube that video, could potentially have some virality behind it, relative to what we're doing, right? Like a video on, Salt Lake is not going to get millions of views, but that's really kind of the important thing is actually shares, I think.
Yeah, well, and yeah, I love it, dude. And you're the first person I've heard talk about that, so I'm glad that you brought that up, dude. It creates that that viral component to it, and it becomes
Yeah.
it all makes sense, dude. And going back to what you said before, because I just want to make sure everybody that's watching or listening to this understands this, because dude, and I get discouraged too. So, I catch myself doing this where I go. Like I'll look at like when Joe Rogan was on YouTube, right? Or you look at some of these big other, these, huge Gary V's, the whomever out there, and you see how many views they're getting. And then I'm like, oh shit, like my videos are only getting 1,000 views and they're getting this. And but it's a different space. And I'm like, dude, multiple good friends that are crushing it in their real estate business with YouTube. And they may have, built up to a couple thousand subscribers. They may average, let's just say 1,000 views per video, but they're making 6 figures a month up there. So it doesn't take, so don't go comparing yourself to freaking, I don't know, PewDiePie or who, like these gamers,
Yeah.
or, right. Cause it is easy to get caught up in why are my views low? Right. Again, that, you can't deposit views at the fucking bank, right? Like all that matters at the end of the day is, are you getting clients? Is it a return on your investment for your time? So, all right. So then you got the shares. All right. So, I remember talking with Jackson, and when he was first kind of cracking the code on this, and he was like, dude, I was getting so many views and comments and likes and subscribes, but there's no business coming from this. And then he was like, oh, well, he had that kind of light bulb moment. It was like, well, I guess I'm not asking for their business, right? So when we get into the video itself, right? Because we've discussed again, like kind of the basic components of this, right? But then now, I mean, this is how people are finding you. This is how they're getting on your content. But then now, as you're creating the content, like they got to get to know you, like you trust you. You're delivering valuable information, but then also like, you got to develop that rapport and then get them owning that mind share. So if and when they're thinking about buying and selling in your area, relocating to your area, it's like Cody's our dude. Like they know that, right?
Yeah.
So what have you found to be powerful of incorporating that in and different call to actions and so forth, where you're not just getting views, but you're getting clients out of this?
Yeah. I mean, like you said with Jackson, you got to ask for the business because a lot of people will watch your videos and they don't know that you necessarily want, they don't know that they should reach out to you, and so you have to actually tell people like, hey, get in touch with me. If you're making that move here, reach out to me, call me, text me, email, whatever you want to do. Just get in touch with me because, we can work together. And people really appreciate that. I've had a lot of people who call me and they're like, this is kind of weird. Like I found you on YouTube and now I'm talking to you. Like, I don't know, is that weird? And for me, it's not anymore. But for these other people, they're kind of like, why am I calling this guy off of YouTube, like off a video I watched, right? It'd be kind of like if you were watching a TV show and all of a sudden you just call up the actor, like, that'd be kind of weird, right? So that's really what it is getting people to reach out to you. And that's the cool thing about it is they already know you, they like you, and they trust you. They've had a chance to sit back and watch your videos for, who knows, maybe it's been 6 months. I've had people watch my videos for over a year and they're like, I've seen every one of your videos. That's probably, 10 hours worth of content if they really watch that. So they've been able to see who I am, how I talk, what I like to do for business, kind of my strategy and just who I am as a person. So when they call me up, they already know that they want to work with me. There's no sales. There's no, I don't have to talk them into it. Generally these people relocating are very well qualified. They've got money, they've got good credit. A lot of them have owned homes already. So you can, these are high quality leads reaching out. And I think that's been the best thing for me, is seeing the level, the high quality of these leads reaching out. I mean, over the last 18 months, I've probably had I think I'm up to like 350 leads, which is not like, anything crazy, but my closing ratio is probably like, I mean, I'd have to go back and calculate it, but it's like 5%, and if I didn't collect any more leads and I just let this run for the next year, I could probably get that up to like, 10, 15%, just because this is a longer timeline. People don't move across state lines just in a month or two, right? It takes them 6 months or a year to make that decision and actually pull the trigger. So closing ratio is very high quality leads. But yeah, I mean, people get to know you, they like you, and they trust you from these videos. So you just got to tell them, hey, reach out to me. My information's in the description, or it's here on the screen. I put it up right up on the screen, and people will eventually do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's as hot as a friend or family referral. It's every bit. It's the hottest lead source, and I shouldn't say just
Yeah.
YouTube, but when it comes to from organic, right, and the same thing, for blog traffic and so forth, and yeah, I mean, I'm not growing my YouTube channel or my content because I don't work with buyers and sellers anymore. I run my real estate team, but I'm not in production anymore. But it's the same thing for like selling the boot camp, right?
Yeah.
Dude, if they are, a listener of the podcast, dude, there is no selling, right? It is just, I've been waiting to do this. I finally, and I got the money saved up. I'm ready to rock. And then they implement, and it's a whole different game, dude. All right. So then, how do you track it, or so like when you have these call to actions in there, yeah, right? Call me, email me, whatever. Like, how do you, other than getting on the phone and asking them, like, is there things that you do? Like, this is one of my biggest frustrations with, YouTube and the podcast of, I can't put pixel, I can't pixel it. I can't, I don't know exactly like what episode prompted them to reach out. I don't know necessarily how long they've been watching. I don't know, and so a lot of times I don't know like where they, okay, do you subscribe from iTunes, or is it from YouTube? Is there anything that you found from a tracking standpoint where you're able to sit there and know for a fact that they're a YouTube lead? And
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of it comes from people telling me that. Most people will reach out in an email or a phone call, and that's the first thing they'll say. They'll say, hey, um I've been watching your videos, right? And so you're like, okay, cool, well, they at least came off of YouTube. Now, which videos did they watch? I don't know. For me, it is I wish I could track it, but since I can't, I don't stress about it. I'm not going to
yeah,
put that mental capacity behind it, because um for me, the amount of leads coming in and just the quality of these leads has been so high that it's not like one of those things where I'm like over here stressing about how can I get 1% higher conversion or 2% higher conversion. For me, it's just kind of like working the leads as best I can. And it's more about making the videos as high quality as I can, and really showing confidence and, knowledge about relocation. People are scared to make a move. It's not just a move across town to buy a new house. They're moving across state lines to oftentimes a place that they've never been. They just accepted a job here. They're like, I've never been there. I'm relying on you. And so it comes across as like that confidence and knowledge to be able to convert those leads, more so than like increasing the conversion of where these people are coming from. So as far as tracking, I don't know that there's any, I mean, I can't really speak to that as far as like what video did they watch, or which, how long have they been watching it. A lot of it's just kind of asking them. People will generally tell you, oh yeah, I've been watching you for 6 months, and I saw your video on this one city and it was awesome. And so it's yeah, that's what I'd say there.
Yep, love it, dude. Love it, man. All right, dude. So then, do you do anything as far as like to get them off of YouTube into your email list or whatever, right? Because it's, been at this game for a long time, just hit 16 years, and dude, things come and go. And at some
Yeah.
point, like at some point YouTube will be disrupted, right? And it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that YouTube will go away. But just like, okay, Facebook is, always changing their algorithm, and it's making it harder and harder on small businesses, and more lucrative to bigger businesses. And, and we've seen this with Google and with pay-per-click. We've seen this with, every platform eventually, disruptions happen. With that. So, like I'm always like, okay, hey, like I'll utilize that for them to find me, and they can keep engaging me there. But then I want to like get them into my CRM in some way, shape, form, or fashion as quickly as I can. Is there anything that you do there, like a relocation guides or like opt-ins for them to, so now you can kind of hit them multi-channel?
Yeah, that's That's a great question. I think that I'm not doing anything like that, but I do think that I will have to, for a couple of reasons. One, like you said, things are changing. YouTube is blowing up right now. I think it has at least another couple of years to really produce results before it gets saturated or before it gets disrupted or whatever. But it will change eventually. And number two, as you get, I'm not worried about competition. But at the same time, as there's 5, 10, 15, 20 agents making videos in my market, I'm going to need a little bit more to stand out as that go-to agent. Because even though they might be reaching out to me, they might be reaching out to somebody else on YouTube as well. And, seeing who's a better match just from having a phone call. So I do think that's going to be something that's needed. And for me, so far, it's been like a rocket ship, I mean, just with like how many leads are coming in and just how busy I've been with business in general with this crazy market, that honestly, I'm kind of just like skimming the cream off the top. And like, if they're not reaching out, like, I hate to admit it, but like, I'm so busy that it's just like, I need to close the deal that's here tomorrow. The one that's 6 months down the line, I'll worry about later, and so that's just kind of how it's been. But for me, it's been more videos, better content, a better service to the leads that I have right now, because especially for me, with such high quality leads coming through, I really want to capture those people into my network because they've got friends or colleagues that also have money and are buying an $800,000 house instead of a 400,000, right? That's always, I think, at least for me, I mean, I'm always trying to level up and close higher deals, more deals, work with clients that are easier. The guys that have money, are generally easier than working with a lead that, doesn't have any money and you're doing asking for closing costs type of thing. So, I do think that is something that I will have to do at some point. At the moment, I'm not doing anything like that. I just keep it simple. That's a big part of what I do. I set them up on a hot sheet directly from our MLS. I don't even send them to my own website anymore because I feel pretty confident that the fact they found me on YouTube and then reached out to me and started this conversation, they view me as the authority. They're looking at me as like, hey, just like you would look at an attorney or an accountant or your doctor, right? You would look at them and be like, hey, I want to work with you. It's that same thing for me. People reach out to me and say, Cody, I want to work with you. They trust how I do things. And so it's just about delivering better service to them.
Yep. Love it, dude. So then, last question when it comes to YouTube itself. Just so people are prepared and know what to get into, right? Because again, like this isn't something you want to dabble in to create success. And this holds true for every lead source. And I always tell people like, look, spend that time investigating, like making sure like this is the path you want to go. Because like you gotta invest that time to really learn it, understand it, master it. And that can take 20 hours a week or whatever it is for months and months and months and months. And, it's kind of an ongoing process. And, kind of, I don't know whether it's just last words of advice when it comes to YouTube or maybe it's like pain points that you had and like when you were maybe ready to throw in the towel and say, fuck it on this thing, right. But you're glad you stuck with it. Like, what would you say outside of, we've covered a lot, but like, anything else that people really need to be prepared for before they jump into this space?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a long game. Like I said, it was 4.5 months before I got my first lead. That guy didn't end up closing on a house until I think it was probably about middle of May. So, I mean, it was 9-10 months before I had closed on that lead. I actually did end up closing some earlier in the year at that time, but it's a long-term thing. And you can get to that point where you're just like, shit, man, like this is not working. 5 views a day, 10 views a day. Some days I drop down to like 1 or 2 views a day. And it's just like that's super discouraging, but you just have to keep going, keep putting out the content. And the thing about YouTube is it's a very exponential thing. You'll see, it's very slow. If you looked at my analytics of my views, it ramps up. I mean, and any YouTuber is going to be in that same spot where you start out, you're getting 10 views a day, and then it's 20, and then it's 50, and then it's 100. And then now I'm at the point where I'm averaging like 700, 800, 900 views a day across all of my videos. One, because I've got more videos, but two, also because I'm showing up at the top of the search list. I'm showing up, YouTube's recommending my videos. So yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's figure out if you actually want to do this. and commit to it for, I would say, at least 6 months. Like 6 months is the absolute minimum. And I don't know about you, but like if I knew what I knew now when I started, I would have started years ago. I would have been like, man, this is such an untapped thing right now. And the lead quality is great. My average selling price went up $160,000 over that 1 year. Just because I was getting higher quality leads, that were buying more expensive homes. Yeah, the market went up, maybe 30 to 40,000 of that, but another $120,000 of that price difference was because I was working with people buying 7, 8, 900, $1 million plus dollar homes, rather than, the lower end of the market, like I was getting a lot of with, Facebook leads. So you get a pay raise there. I mean, there's just so many benefits to it. My tips would just be, you just got to jump in, but you got to commit for at least 6 months, and you should start to see that growth after that long.
Yep. Yeah. I to agree. I mean, dude, it's everybody I've talked to has seen that same trajectory. I mean, really, it's been that like 10 to, I mean, I just recently had, Robert and Christy on as well. And,
Yeah.
And they were, that's that 10 to 12 month mark before it really started hitting. And I know others that it took about a year because they're not as necessarily, and when I say a year for even start getting leads, right? Because they're not in as big of a relocation area, but it started to pay off, after that point. And that holds true for almost every lead source, right? If we look at it, like, okay, my average Facebook paid lead is in my CRM 6.7 months before they become a client. So we're looking at about 10 months before we get our first closing, right? And sometimes you get lucky and that happens before, sometimes it's longer, but on an average standpoint, it's that way. And I think it's important for people to understand that usually the more fruitful something is, the longer the commitment and the learning curve for it, right? Like, okay, you can go out there and learn open houses and start doing open houses fast. You can go out there and start calling expireds or FSBOs fast, right? But you're going to have a lower capacity on those than something like this, because this is a machine that is now working for you 24/7, that you can scale and expand at site. Like I can only do so many open houses. I can only cold call so many people. I can only, right. But the cool part about it, like you'd mentioned, like, as it becomes more saturated and so forth. And I mean, there are definitely more YouTubers, if you will, or content creators jumping on the platform, but because it is such a learning curve and takes such a commitment, the cool thing is though, is even as people grow, I've seen this with Facebook too, right? The saturation. So I just, right before we jumped on this, I was with my Facebook coach. My Facebook coach was like, if we look at I can't remember if they said 3 or 5 years ago, but there was only 3 million businesses advertising on Facebook. And then they're like, 2 years ago, there was 11 million. Today there's 17 million, right? So the saturation is really growing. Right. I mean, the amount of people on there are growing, but it doesn't mean that they're committed to mastering it, right? So like I found it where it kind of becomes that blue ocean, because other realtors might see what you're doing, but they're not going to put in the time and the mastery and the focus that goes into it. So, these strategies become a blue ocean, so when people get discouraged about, oh, well, fuck, dude, that's so much time to put into this and learn it and whatever. Like, don't look at this as a negative. That's a positive, dude. That's gonna mean that. I mean, the more resistance it is to master something, the less competition you're gonna ever have.
Yeah, you're gonna get less competition, and people will drop out. I mean, I've seen other successful YouTubers who just slowly start, uploading less and less and less, and then all of a sudden they kind of become irrelevant. And so that's your opportunity to pounce on it. And the other thing that I'd added that's cool about YouTube is it works around the clock. I mean, I'm getting views at midnight. I mean, I've got 2 clients, clients or leads or whatever in Dubai, that are watching my videos at 2 a.m. because it's, I don't know, 5 o'clock for them. And so they're, it works around the clock. It works even when you're not working. And that's the coolest thing about it. And if you can scale and get to that point where, you're the person that people go to, that's what's important, because you're going to get people. I mean, open houses are saturated, right? Facebook leads are every avenue out there is saturated. Calling FSBOs, right? How many FSBOs do you talk to? And they're like, you're the 7th agent to call me today, right? Well, you got to be that one that you convince them or whatever. So YouTube's going to be the same way. But the cool thing about it is you're putting the content out there and you're letting the lead decide if they like you more than the next guy or the next girl, right? They're going to actually reach out to you because they like your personality, or because they want to work with a young guy, or they want to work with an old guy, or they want to work with somebody who I get a lot of people reaching out for investment. They're like, hey, I live in California. I want to invest in Utah real estate. And I'm like, I'm your guy. I'm a local investor here. I own units. I'm the guy to help you. Whereas maybe that next YouTuber has never done any investment. So that's really the cool thing, is you can still get into the niches and you can still get people reaching out that want to work with you for a specific reason.
Yep. Love it, dude. Love it, man. So, dude, I mean, this is blowing up, dude. You're busy as shit.
Yeah.
What do you see for the future for you, man? Do you see yourself, growing a team to be able to kind of help, but you can keep growing this machine and feed it, like what do you see yourself, man?
Yeah. So I just kind of brought on like another agent to help with another market that is close enough where I get people reaching out for that, but it's not necessarily an area that I want to work. I'd rather work in the areas that are kind of in my backyard, or even just in higher price points. So I do have like an agent that I'm starting to refer stuff out to. But honestly, I mean, I don't know if it grew into a team. That would be awesome. I think we're getting to that point. Salt Lake is still relatively small compared to, I don't want to say, I'm not trying to make excuses or anything, but I mean, we're not Austin, Texas. We're not Phoenix. We're not Vegas, where these other cities get a lot of attention. Salt Lake is still kind of just a little off the map. And so I think I'm at that point where I'm hitting full capacity, and now's the time I'm getting enough leads that I can start bringing on other people. And, if I can do that, great. If I can't, that's okay too. I'll just kind of keep, scooping off the cream off the top, closing deals. And, just loving every minute of it. It's been game changing to be on this YouTube train. So that's cool.
Yeah, love it, dude. All right, man. I know we're going long on time, and for those that are watching and listening, man, if they want to continue following you and checking out your amazing channel, checking all the amazing stuff that you're up to, as well as, we're all realtors here that are watching and listening to this. If they have you're a big relo area, if they have clients that are looking to relocate to the Salt Lake City area, like where's the best place, man, for people to get in touch with you, to continue following you and so forth?
Yeah, YouTube's the best. My channel is just living in Salt Lake City, Utah, or living in Salt Lake City. So that's the best place to find me, find my channel, find my videos, whatever. I'm on Facebook a little bit, but honestly, I try to stay off Facebook. It's such a time suck. So I'll probably be pretty slow to respond to you if you message me there or on Instagram or whatever. But I pretty much spend all my time on YouTube, which is basically, there's no messaging there. But if you wanted to like reach out to me personally, just send me a Facebook message or something. That's best. Or yeah.
Perfect, man. Well, Cody, dude, I know how busy you are, man. We appreciate you taking time. Very busy to be here, dude. This has been awesome, man.
My pleasure, dude. I'm freaking stoked. I've been watching the podcast, been a part of your master group for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years. I got in fairly early. And this has always kind of been like a dream to just be on the channel, be talking to you for an hour. I can't tell you how fucking excited I am about this. It's just been my honor. So thank you.
Yeah, 100%, man. No, it's been amazing seeing all your success, dude. And
speaking of which, if anybody's watching this, considering joining Joshua's group, we didn't even talk about that here, but going through the mastery program, are you still doing the boot camp? Is that still like a thing? I know it's kind of shifted and evolved and whatever.
Yeah, we are. It started off with, like I said, 90-day thing, and then we had the alumni that was ongoing. But you know how much is in there and how deep we go, and it was just like 90 days was too overwhelming, because I didn't want to just make it a watered down program. So we transitioned it into a year program. So it's okay. Yeah, it's all really the same.
I think that's good. 90 days was fine. If you can spread it out over a year, that's just going to make you commit to the process more and more. And having joined that, every single step that I took along the way to just learn a little bit more and get a little bit further ahead, I credit a lot of that back to you in the program and just the network of other badass realtors who are trying to get out there and hustle and make things happen. I would say that the people in your group I would say almost all of them are probably in the top 5-10% of agents in the country, just because of the mindset and the valuable training that you give. So if anybody's thinking about jumping in, don't even hesitate. It'll be absolutely the best money you spend all year. don't buy the new car, don't buy the stupid $6,000 camera, whatever, just join the program. And you won't regret it.
Yeah, man. I truly appreciate the plug, dude. It means a lot, man. And honored to roll with you, dude. And again, this has been awesome. And those watching and listening, as always, we truly appreciate you being here. Truly appreciate all your support. Keep up the amazing work. Keep kicking ass, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Yeah. Peace.
I hope you enjoyed this GSD Mode podcast episode. Now make sure you get shit done and smash that subscribe button now.